Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining up here for the Nextech quarterly release party. My name is Greg Rabakis. I'm the Director of Ophthalmology Sales, and my co-host here is going to be Brian Janusa. He's our Senior Manager of Sales Engineering. Brian, you want to just say hi?
Yep. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our party. We're going to walk through a couple of things. Before we do, though, Greg, I think we wanted to do a kind of like a poll just to see where everybody stands. Is that right?
Yeah, let's do it. So, poll question number one. We're going to have a couple of these questions as we kind of go through here, but generally, why is everybody here? So why are you attending this webinar? Are we just kind of looking into other software solutions? Are you curious to what we have going on, or other?
We'll give everybody just a little bit to respond to the poll here. We'll give them maybe like 10 more seconds or so, and then we'll read through some of the answers just to see what everything looks like. So just a reminder, everybody, the poll question is going to be essentially, why are we on today's webinar? You're just looking for solutions, curious about what we're up to, or is there just kind of some other kind of thoughts that you have in your mind? Give 2 more seconds, and there we are. So it looks like that's actually it's a good split. So it's a split between people are just curious what we're up to, and then a lot of people put other, which is interesting. We'll probably find out more to that, but it's a good split.
Awesome. Well, definitely be able to show you some cool new stuff that we've been up to. But for those of you that are not aware of Nextech, it's always fun to kind of go over the numbers and who we are. So Nextech has just over 6,000 eye care providers, which equates to over 1,000 practices throughout the country. So the kind of the fun thing here is if you're in one of these areas, you can maybe pick out one of these bigger, office names that you might have seen in the past, or, if you have a referring relationship with. However, if there's anybody locally that uses the product or would like to be in contact with, towards the end, we could talk a little bit more about that. Happy to set you guys up with maybe more of a local reference. Awesome. So when we talk about innovation, Nextech defines innovation, and we really break that up into 4 pillars. The first one is really simplicity, which is kind of just how can we streamline different workflows, processes, not enforce workarounds. Charting innovation. One of the things I think we're most known for in our EMR is our single page layout, whether that's trying to get through the encounter as quickly as possible with less clicks. That is our goal. Support as well. 80% of our calls are answered in less than 3 minutes. So as a sales rep, I've heard some horror stories from existing companies out there where there's not even someone available that you can get it to on the phone, or if you do, it's kind of a ticket-based system. So it's a very opposite approach for Nextech. And then last but not least, which is a general focus over the last year, specifically around the patient experience. So whether you're looking at acquisition, retention, or just offering your patients a little bit more of a robust engagement service like a portal, or trying to engage with your patients outside the normal flow, Nextech's technologies really does enable you to do that.
Awesome. I wanted to remind too, Greg, I forgot to mention this. At the end of this webinar, we're going to do a Q&A, right? So any questions that come up as we present today, use the question section. We'll read through them. We'll talk about them. Some of it will be about patient experience and engagement and just how the chart works. Anything on your mind, let us know. We'll try to address during, but again, at the end, we'll make sure we address. That leads into another poll. I'm going to read this one actually, because we're going to talk about some practice management issues in just a moment. Question for everybody on the phone: what is your biggest issue with revenue collections in general? Is it claims that need to be billed out faster and quicker? Is it collecting patient responsibility sooner and easier? Or is it just you need help with the entire revenue collection process? Just like before, we'll give everybody about a good 10 seconds or so. We'll read through the answers, and then we'll talk about what that means for Nextech in just a moment. Actually, it looks like most of the answers are coming in. We'll give 2 more seconds, and there we are. Actually, so this is interesting, Greg. 100% put their entire revenue collection process essentially needs to be rehauled or relooked at. 100%. So yeah. Nobody chose anything else. So we're in for a treat today. I'm going to actually take over here for just a moment. Let's talk about some revenue collection and speed to revenue. That's going to be more important for us. What this means for us is bills can be effectively sent out faster and, more importantly, paid faster using our streamlined rebilling process. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. This is going to reduce our costs. It's going to collect revenue faster at time of visit. So that means when we talk about things like a patient responsibility estimator, which we'll see shortly, it is highly possible that you collect at time of visit what the patient owes, whether that is co-pays, deductibles, co-insurances, or others. We'll see that in just a minute. And also, as a sneak peek, collection of patient responsibility is faster because things like a link where you can send the patient balance through email is also going to be an option. We're going to see some more of that in just a second. Big key here, that is.
One of the most common questions, I get through whether it's a client or prospect that's looking at Nextech is, we're looking at ways of technology to do more with less. There's obviously staffing issues that are affecting different places all throughout the country. So one of the focuses for Nextech was really just trying to hone in on using the technology to be able to accomplish some of these tasks with potentially, less overhead, potentially not having to fill those roles that might have been missing. So.
Yeah, and Greg, you said it best. Do more for less, right? Software should work for you. Software should do a majority of the work through automation tools. And we're going to see some of that in just a moment. We're going to do a live demonstration of some of these features shortly. Before we do, let's do one last question. Let's talk about the clinical side. Question for everybody is, well, how is your current software handling and navigating the regulatory requirements as things change? Is everything good, right? Software's on top of it. We don't have to worry about regulatory at all. Is it maybe, you're assuming that everything's being handled, but we really don't know? Or is it you have no idea, right? You haven't heard anything from your current vendor. You're on your own as far as this is concerned.
There is no
everybody about 10 seconds. Go ahead, Greg.
I said there's no wrong answers here.
That's right. And we're seeing a good mix of responses already in the poll. We'll give everybody about 2 or 3 more seconds, and we'll talk about what this means for us. There we are, and it's an even split between our last two. So 50% of us assume that the vendor is handling our regulatory requirements. It's interesting that we assume that. We should really know that. But another half of us have no idea, right? We haven't heard from the vendor as things change, and we're kind of left on our own.
Yeah,
it's a good segue.
That's an interesting point because there has been a massive amount of changes in the compliance space, specifically affecting next year. So regardless of your, vendor process, I do employ you guys to reach out to your current vendors just to make sure that they are checking those boxes for you guys. One of the things that Nextech has spent a lot of time this past year is gearing up for next year's compliance. I think, Brian, there might even be a slide I think you're going to talk about next on some of that stuff.
Yeah, actually, that's a great segue. There has been a lot of changes, over the past years and future times, and we want to make sure that you can maximize your MIPS performance. So what we're going to see is built-in regulatory tools. This way we can make sure at time of visit everything's great. We'll also have the opportunity, we won't see this on today's webinar, but for rapid export through the EHI export utility, that is going to be an option too. More importantly, right, there's going to be state reporting and MIPS PI requirements built into the chart. So there should be no guesswork is what we're talking about here. And then from a reach out perspective, we would always reach out to you to let you know any changes that are going to be coming and what does that mean for you. We're going to see that in the software in just a moment, but huge things. This really runs our practice. We want to make sure everyone is informed with that.
Yeah. And just as a reminder, Nextech is the #1 integrated EHR solution with the IRIS registry. So I would imagine the bulk, if not all of you on this webinar, either are currently reporting with IRIS or have experience reporting with IRIS. The process with Nextech is quite seamless. So once we get into the demo, which is, I think, coming up next, we'll be able to show you guys a little bit about what that looks like.
Absolutely. So let's pull up live software. For this, I'm going to do two things. Greg, let's go ahead and jump off camera just so we can focus on the actual software itself. We'll come back on in just a little bit. And then two, more importantly, I'm going to share my screen. This way we can talk about a few things. So for those that haven't seen it, this is first going to be the practice management side. We're going to look at a couple things, and then we're going to also look at the clinical side of things. But what I wanted to focus on today was really two pieces on the practice management, and that relates speed to revenue. What you're seeing before in front of us, if we haven't seen it before, this is our check-in screen. And essentially the check-in screen lets us see a little bit about the patient as we check them in. It's going to let the office understand what forms have been signed online through our patient portal. Yes, we do have a patient portal, of course. And this is going to tell us if they were signed or not. There's opportunities to send out like a text link. There's opportunities to do like a QR code. So this way you can do more of a kiosk function. You'll see also to the right, insurance information along with automatic eligibility has already ran to let me know this patient has a high deductible. We'll see that in just a moment. Their demographic and billing information here. And then most importantly, something I briefly mentioned is a patient estimate for today's visit. Now this is important for two reasons. One, this gives the patient the ability to see what they would owe for today's visit approximately. We could print this out if we wanted to. This would handle some things like good faith estimates if your patients are asking for it. Would look something like this as an example. But more importantly, from a speed to revenue standpoint, we can now collect this, whether it's copays, deductibles, or coinsurance before the patient walks out the door, which means your statement cycles will be less and less and less. This is just an opportunity to see. When we do a live demonstration, we'll personalize it, of course, to your practice, and we'll kind of see it that way. Now, what also has been added, because we're a big fan of change, we're a big fan of addition. Patient Estimator is relatively new, came out a couple weeks ago. What we also added is the ability to see in one place all of your notes, billing notes in particular. What I mean by that is, just pull it up, in one place we can now see appointment notes, AR work list notes, eligibility notes, charges notes, without having to go to multiple tabs. Again, for those that haven't seen the system before, this is really important, especially for the billing team. They no longer have to jump between different menus and sub-menus. It's all in one place, which means I can work the patient quicker, I can get the claim fixed and sent out the door quicker, which means I can get paid just as fast. So this is going to be a new encounter note. Again, as we do a live demonstration with your practice, we'll talk more and more about it. Let's give some love to the clinical side. For those that haven't seen this, what we're looking at is going to be a clinical chart. What's most famous here, everything is going to be on one page. So again, using like the encounter notes where I don't have to jump screen to screen to screen, same thing. Our providers can work right in this screen. What we'll also find in here, let me just scroll back to the top here. We also are a big fan of looking at a history, right? On the top here is our patient header, and it will show their last visits based off of what you scroll down, and it will look at things like their visual acuities, their pressures, or letters sent, and other items. This is all customizable. Again, this is just a high level. Now for today's purpose, let's look at two things. One is you'll notice here on the left-hand side, this is our built-in quality gauge tool, and it's letting us know that there's documentation missing by a red marker, so this way we can move forward. What is that documentation? Well, we haven't actually documented their current meds. What's most important with this is as I scroll through the chart, it will highlight different pieces for me that I need to actually document. In real time, this will update. This is based off of the system settings of what you want to track. Greg, I know this is, especially from a sales standpoint and a customer standpoint, big tool here. Any flavor that you wanted to add to this before we also talk about the inline knowledge base tool here?
Yeah, one of the things I definitely would like to point out about this particular tool is it's adaptive as the patient's history may change. So as you can see here, obviously, as Brian said, in real time, it will tell us what we've met, what we haven't met, and what's not applicable. However, if this patient did wind up having cataract surgery, and today was the day we documented that, or if they fell into any of these other quality measures, it would react in real time. So it really gives the staff a visual cue right there on the spot, whether or not they've passed or failed on this particular patient. The idea behind here is to cut out all of that guesswork and try and get on top of it on the same day of the encounter. Again, this quality tool is completely included with our platform. This isn't an add-on or anything like that, and it is definitely a game changer, in my opinion, in how MIPS is done day to day.
Speaking of game changers, actually, that kind of brings up our next point. So those have never seen Nextech EMR. There's something called a knowledge base in it, and a knowledge base is essentially described as findings from other providers are available to you. That's a very high-level understanding. And historically, it's already built into the system. You're able to pull from it, but we made it a little bit difficult in the past. This way, you can edit things on the fly. Watch this. This is something new, built right into the system. If you want to make any changes on the fly, all we have to do is click on our settings, and this little pen button appears. What this will let us do is modify our selections right here, right now. As an idea, we can load up our knowledge base in the system. And what this is showing, for those that haven't seen it before, left-hand side, this is going to be our master list. These are things that we can pull relative to this finding. On the right is what we're actually using. Watch how easy it is. If we wanted to use anything, we just simply check it off, and then we can move it to the right. I won't change anything from a demo database standpoint, but it's as easy as moving things up and down or left to right. You don't have to be a computer programmer to do this. This is how you modify your chart right here, right now. You don't need support to do any of these things. These are huge tools. Greg, I know this is a huge fan for you. Anything that you wanted to add to this piece?
Yeah, I mean, just one of the things we hear from most people that are evaluating the platform is, our current EMR system is a bit clunky to make changes, or if we need to make a change, we need to contact the company and wait for them to, publish that change. With Nextech, over the past 6 months or so, I think we slowly started to roll this feature out. And the idea here is to make those changes right there on the fly. So if, the product is, if you're having to hunt and peck and look for different things that you commonly say, it's easy to make those changes right here. Now you can set this up per provider, you could set this up per specialty, you could set this up per practice. So as far as making changes and edits right there on the fly happen instantaneously. And once we get to the bottom in our impression and plan, we'll also show you guys how to free type any common discussions that can also be saved on the fly, which I think, again, is just a great feature as far as not having to contact your EHR vendor to make those changes.
Yeah, just to kind of point that out, let's scroll down to our impression and plan section. What Greg is referring to is that with a simple click, not only are all of our findings here, but if we had to make any changes on the fly, what we'll have the opportunity of doing, this will look very similar, where there's a pen icon, we can change the knowledge base, we can simply click and add our findings, or Greg has mentioned, we can also free type here as needed. Right, so this gives you the opportunity that as you see the patient, we don't have to just necessarily mess with settings. We can just type as needed, move on, and get that saved to our profile. So this way we don't have to free type it again.
This is a new feature, and this will be saved based off of that diagnosis as well. So it's not like something you're going to have to do every single time. But just like our conventional knowledge base, you are actually able to launch into our interactive KB as well to make those changes. So this, I know, is a big pain point for a lot of customers that were switching from a software where you can make changes on the fly. So we implemented this technology right here inside the chart.
Absolutely. As I pull back open our PowerPoint, there's a few more things that we're going to talk about, of course, but as I pull this up, just a reminder, 2 things. One, any questions, let us know in that question section. We're going to get to that momentarily. 2 is this, of course, this is a high level, mostly focusing on the new additions that happened this quarter. If and when you're ready, we'd love to have a detailed demonstration specific to your office. We'll give you the whole solution here, not just these individual features. With Greg, going back to you, let's talk about the real results, and then we'll get to a Q&A section after.
Yeah, let's go ahead and throw all of them up there, and I'll talk about 2 of them that I particularly like. So again, just actually showing real results, right? It's one thing to just talk about these features, it's another thing to prove them. So the two that touch home to me the most is with charting innovation, Salve Vision was actually spending less than 2 minutes on the entire charting process. Prior to Nextech, I was a technician of Scribe for 7 years. I actually used this product, so I can agree completely with that comment. Where I have used other softwares in the past, it is a lot of clicking in Windows, as you guys probably are aware. I think the second thing that is kind of unique here is really taking it back to what we talked about in the beginning of the conversation, which is how do I do more with less? So Pima Eye Institute is a perfect example of that. There you were able to save 10 minutes on paperwork per patient per appointment. So if you equate that over the course of an entire day with portal adoption and some of those patient engagement tools that we have, that clearly equates to some real results. Yeah.
Perfect.
We have one more slide. Perfect. Yeah, so essentially in closing, the Nextech mission is really to simplify the delivery of excellent patient care. And the 3 pillars really for that are efficiency, which is just being more efficient, like we said multiple times, doing more with less. Speed to revenue, getting paid faster, clearer view on what the actual revenue of the practice is doing. And then the third one, which is really what we've doubled down in my opinion, in the last year or so, is helping deliver on patient care. So whether that's different patient engagements, like I mentioned earlier with the portal, appointment reminders, and different things like that, having patients be a little bit more interactive with the practice outside normal business. But with that being said, Brian, did you want to take it to a couple of questions, or I guess we can give everybody a couple of minutes here?
Yeah, let's. There's already some questions in the funnel here. We'll just as a reminder, we'll give everybody the opportunity to type out your questions in the question section. This is our time that Greg and I will address anything that came up. I did want to bring up one of the first questions. I'll handle this one, Greg. The question ultimately from a few people is, well, is this recorded? If so, how do we get access to it? Our staff would love to see this. What happens? Yes, this is being recorded. This will be sent out through our team shortly after this call, usually like a couple days after, and then we can always review that as necessary. It looks like another question just came in. Actually, Greg, I'm going to pass this over to you. The question involves, they essentially use, of course, an existing practice management EMR solution. Their concern is around data conversion. Do you want to kind of address that topic?
Yeah, it's probably the most common question we get, mostly after a demonstration. About 98% of the opportunities that Nextech does are EMR to EMR, meaning less than 2% are really paper these days. So people are on their second, their third, even their fourth EMR. So I guess my point is data conversion is much more common than uncommon than if we were having this conversation, say 5, 10 years ago. We do a full discrete data conversion. So that term data conversion gets tossed around by a lot of vendors. Discrete data conversion basically means we will take the data from your existing platform and map it to the most applicable spot inside our software. So in short, when you open up Jane Doe's chart, or if you want to look at past, appointment history, future appointment history, demographic information, all of that will be placed inside its most appropriate spot inside our platform. Now, certain EMRs and PMs, mostly on the EMR front, are not able to report on discrete data. And in that sense, we can do a PDF, archive length, quite a few different options. But for the most part, discrete data seems to be the easiest way to scale into the new product.
Yeah, there was a few questions that kind of all revolved around that data conversion process, so I'm glad that we're able to address that. Another question came up. So I mentioned a patient portal, and I mentioned some intake forms, but Greg, do you want to talk more about, what the patient portal means, not only to the practice and of course the patient as well?
Sure. Yeah, the patient portal is something that's included with the Nextech subscription. With a full suite PM and EMR, patients are able to fill out clinical information such as past social family history, things that technicians tend to take a long time on. They're now able to sign off on certain consents. So whether that's financial policies or HIPAA, That could all be pushed out to the portal. They can even request appointments, book an appointment online, quite an assortment of different things that can be done on the portal, in addition to the mandates such as being able to retrieve a medical note or send a doctor or staff a message through secure messaging, all built into our patient portal. Yeah, and on the patient portal front as well, that could be done on a mobile device, that could be done on their computer. They can even do it inside the office by scanning a QR code and handing a communal device or even their own device to fill that out. So tons of options when it comes to the patient portal front.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm going to handle this next question. The questions revolve around reporting in the system. We didn't get to talk about reporting. Let me just kind of dive into that. Of course, the system has reporting. There's going to be several different methods of reporting, from end of day and standard user reporting and financial reporting and things like that. But what I would love to show you on a in detail call is something that we call analytics. It's a visual-based reporting tool. It's essentially dashboarding that allows like auto emailing and visual trends to see where we're going and where we were. That is also built into the system. Again, we didn't talk about it because we've offered this for a while now, but short answer is yes, there's reporting and there's plenty of it. We'll definitely see that on a future call here. With that, Greg, I don't think there's any other questions here. Do you want to wrap us up and then we'll kind of be on for our day?
Absolutely. Well, again, I do appreciate everybody's time here, giving us some time, which I presume, depending on where you are in the country, is during your lunch break. Excuse me. So please feel free to reach out at that email that we put forward. Obviously, a copy of this recording will be available for everybody. But again, I do appreciate everybody's time. Brian, thank you again so much for kind of walking us through this presentation. And we'll see you guys next quarter.
Thanks, Al.